local people that are making this a better place. Louder, Debbie, thank you. There's a person who knows. Thank you so much, Debbie. She knows voices, as it turns out. Jimmy Neutron, among other voices. Thank you, Debbie. I'll eat that mic. Much better. How's that? A little bit better. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. Anybody else grew up here in the Valley? All right. Good place to grow up. But being a good deal older than most of you, I remember what it was like in the 50s and 60s. We had horrible choking smog. Anybody else remember that smog from years ago? It lasted for a while, so even if you're relatively young, you remember how bad the smog was. I was born in 1949 at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital, came home to a little house in Van Nuys a few days later, and grew up in the 50s and 60s in that horrible smog. So when the first Earth Day came around in 1970, I asked, what are you going to do? What does Earth Day mean? And people said, well, we're going to clean up the water and we're going to clean up the air. And I knew that we needed help in both areas because I'd lived in smoggy LA, and it hurt to run from here to where that bouncy house was, or just sitting. If you just sat here in a chair, it hurt like hell because the smog was so very bad. And as most of you also know, even though we have 4 times the cars since 1970 in that first Earth Day and millions more people, there's a fraction of the smog now. We all did that. Give yourselves a hand. You can see the Verdugo Hills, you can see the Simi Hills, you can see the San Gabriels, you can see those hills most of the year. Why? Because the air is much, much cleaner. 4 times the cars, millions more people get a fraction of the smog. And we did it with good technology that works, with combined cycle gas turbines, spray paint booths, catalytic converters on cars, and all the simple stuff I started doing in 1970. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. What I did in 1970, and more importantly, what I didn't do. I didn't run out and buy solar panels I couldn't afford in 1970. I hope you all get solar if you can afford it. There are solar leases and things now, and many people do that, but back in 1970 I couldn't afford it. It's about doing what you can afford. It's a very interesting list that people always give me of things that they can't do. I don't have a good rooftop for solar. I can't get an electric car because of the amount of miles I drive. That's a very good list, and I'm happy to hear it each time. The more important list I want to hear is the things that you can do. Can you buy some energy efficient light bulbs? Can you ride a bike if weather and fitness permit?
Yes.
Can you take public transportation if it's available near you? And it is more and more. Can you get some weather stripping put up around your house? Energy saving light bulbs, energy saving thermostat. Can you do those things?
Yes.
Of course you can. And if you're here today, you probably already did a lot of those things, and I'm hoping you do one more. Try one more thing today, something that you can afford. And if you can't afford this, and many times it's free with the local utility, get a home energy audit. People regularly come up to me and say, Ed, I want to get solar like you. And I say, okay, let me give you a number to call. And I give them a number, and then they look at the card and they go, wait a second, this isn't a solar company, it says home energy audit. I don't want a home energy audit. I said, I want you to get a home energy audit before you think about doing solar. For every dollar you put into energy efficiency, you're going to save $5 in the cost of your solar. That's what it's about, doing the stuff you can afford. Reduce your demand first, then go get your solar if you can still afford it, and you can. And if you do it at the right rate, which I did in 1970, I was a broken, struggling actor in 1970. I didn't have the money for fancy things like that. We worked on St. Elsewhere a few years later together. I didn't have that kind of money from a TV series back in 1970, so I did what I can afford. I became a vegetarian. That was inexpensive. I started recycling, I started composting, and I pretty soon learned that I was saving money doing each and every one of these things. I even bought a 1970 electric car. I'm not making that up. I bought an electric car in 1970. It was a Taylor-Dunn electric car. They still make them today. They're not really practical for the road, okay? It's like a golf cart with a windshield wiper and a horn. But I drove it around and I quickly learned, same as it is today, it was cheaper to buy electricity to fuel the vehicle than it is to buy the gasoline as it is in 2018. And there was no service to speak of. There's no tune-up or oil change or fan belt or radiator flush or smog check. There's none of those things I have with a normal car. So I saved money at every turn. After 15 years of finally doing all that stuff, from 1970 to 1985, I could finally afford solar. I still couldn't afford solar electric, but I bought a solar hot water system at my home in Ojai. I don't live there anymore, haven't for years, but I check on it from time to time. That solar hot water system is still working from 1985 to date. That's 33 years. And the solar hot water in my house now works. And finally in 1990 I got solar electric, and that system works fantastic. And I have what they call a LEED Platinum home. It's a home that's very, very green. Thank you. That is good for the long run for my kids and grandkids, which I hope will inherit this home. It's going to make those bills low over the life of the home. And I'll just close by saying, when most people look at the cost of a home, they look at the cost of materials and labor. And that's a normal way to look at things. That makes some sense. Another way to look at the home is the cost of the home over the life of the home. That would include, wouldn't it, the cost of running the home? Because otherwise you're just looking at an iceberg, the little piece that's above the waterline. That's the cost of labor and materials. The cost of running that home over its life can be a lot if you don't build it smart. I built this LEED Platinum home smart. It's featured in Toluca Lake magazine. Go by their booth and look at all the wonderful things that they have to offer in this great magazine. There's a wonderful article, my wife and I, in our LEED Platinum home. It also somehow fulfilled Rochelle's dream of having a French Mediterranean fancy pants home. She got all that stuff that she wanted. She got more closet space, which was what it was really all about, okay? Closet space. That's why we moved from Studio City to a mile into the Colfax Meadows area. But she got all that, and I got a home with lower bills in my old 1936 home that I bought in 1988, and I could never really get fully efficient. But now with new technology, with 2018 and indeed 2011 and 12 and 13, as we were building the house, with all that technology that exists, I have lower, super low electric, water, and natural gas bills, and that's what we can do, which is good for the nation. We could lessen our dependence on foreign oil, clean up the air in our cities, and put money in our pocket. Anybody else want to do those three things? Let's do that. Visit all these wonderful booths here. See the friends I talked about. Debbie's going to be up here in a minute. Wonderful music, wonderful people. And I have books to sign there. If you want to have a little how-to book that's only $10, it's normally $18. I'm selling them signed for $10, bargain price. Come on by and say hi. Or just say hi anyway. You don't have to buy a book. Thank you, and thank you, Debbie, for everything. You're the best.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ed Begley Jr., everyone.